I am happy to lay out every detail and all the intel to you as an individual, to any other member, or to a committee, or anything you want on these Chinese calls, at your convenience. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Duckworth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share my colleagues' concerns about the rapid collapse of the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces and the Afghan government and the failure of our intelligence. We need some answers. After investing 2 decades, nearly $2 trillion, and most importantly, the lives of almost 2,500 of American troops, our nation must conduct a thorough and honest review of the United States government's involvement in Afghanistan since the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. For the sake of current and future generations of warfighters, we must capture the hard lessons from Afghanistan to ensure that these lessons are not forgotten or worse, repeated on a future battlefield. This is our moral responsibility as a nation. Gentlemen, all 3 of you have been involved in the war in Afghanistan multiple times in multiple different capacities throughout your careers. Secretary Austin, was the situation on the ground in Afghanistan over the last few months influenced by previous decisions made over the course of several years?
I absolutely believe that, Senator. Foremost among those decisions is the Doha Agreement. I think that severely impacted the morale of the military.
Thank you. Secretary Austin, if that's the case, is it possible to have an intellectually honest lessons learned exercise that only looks at the most recent events in Afghanistan of the last couple of months, or must any effective review look at the whole 20 years since September 11th?
I think you have to look at the entire 20 years, Senator. I think there's some great lessons learned that we're going to take away once we do that. But yeah, I believe you got to look at the entire time span.
Thank you. I agree that an effective review must be comprehensive. After all, the war in Afghanistan was shaped by 4 different administrations and 11 different Congresses. No party should be looking to score cheap partisan political points off a multi-decade nation-building failure that was bipartisan in the making. Instead, Congress should authorize a long-term effort solely devoted to bringing accountability and transparency to the Afghanistan war and lessons to be learned. That is why on Thursday, I will be introducing the Afghanistan War Study Commission. My bill would establish a bipartisan independent commission to examine every aspect of the war, including the political and strategic decisions that transformed a focused military mission into vast nation-building campaign. Importantly, this commission must produce actionable recommendations designed to guide the development of real reforms, just as the 9/11 Commission's work informed congressional lawmaking efforts in the years after its publication. Secretary Austin, would you agree with me that such an independent, long-term study could serve as an effective complementary effort to the more targeted lessons learned reviews that DoD always conducts, particularly in shedding light on how Congress and civilian leaders from multiple government agencies can do a better job in defining the scope of military missions and actually enforcing legal limitations on the use of force?
I would, and the point that you're making, it needs to, my view is it needs to be an interagency approach to this. So.
Thank you, and I do want to note that my family and I were in Cambodia until the very end. I'm an American, I was born in Thailand, but my father worked for the United Nations, and to answer my colleague's question, my father chose to stay as long as possible to help the Cambodian people as long as possible. And he left after American troops had left. The American ambassador stayed behind after American troops had left. And in fact, after the last military transport had left, I know this because my father was on the last military transport to leave Cambodia, and the ambassador had to travel overland. So yes, we do leave Americans behind, but this is all tied to NEO operations and how that is planned, which is why I think it is so important that we have an independent investigation. Maybe the failure here was that we didn't have a NEO plan in place and we didn't activate it before all of our troops left. But if that's the case, we need to learn that. So I would ask for my colleagues to consider this independent commission. We put somebody in charge of it who was not in a decision-making capacity during the 20 years, make it nonpartisan, and let's get those lessons learned so we don't make these same mistakes over and over again. Our troops deserve better, and the families of the 2,500 American troops who laid down their lives to protect and defend this Constitution, who followed the lawful order of all of those presidents, they deserve better than partisan fights. We need to get some real answers. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Now let me recognize Senator Blackburn.